Hello, Wonderhussy here. And by here, I mean in the middle of the beautiful Mojave Desert on a balmy, clear-skied, sunny November's day. About to check out a place I've driven past about 1,000,001 times, but never stopped to investigate until today. This place is called the Salt Creek Hills, and there's an informational sign here that talks about, well, it's a desert riparian and wetland area. Okay, you're probably wondering how in the world there could be a riparian wetland area in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Well, you'd be right in finding that unusual, because it is very unusual to find standing water in the middle of the Mojave Desert, especially only about 10 miles outside Death Valley. But we happen to be in the area of the Amargosa River. The Amargosa in Spanish means bitter water, and it's a really unusual river that flows from Beatty, Nevada for about 200 miles, mostly underground. Then it curves up and ends in a Badwater Basin in Death Valley. You know, the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, that Badwater Basin? Well, back in the day, in the prehistoric day, it was a lake called Lake Manly, and well, that's all dried up now, but this Amargosa River still kind of peters out into its basin. Anyway, like I was saying, the Amargosa River is underground for most of its course, but it does kind of bubble up to the surface in a few places, one of which is just a few miles north of here. But the place we're at today is called the Salt Creek Hills. I guess there's another kind of tributary that feeds into the Amargosa intermittently, seasonally, called Salt Creek. And, well, I guess it meets the Amargosa River somewhere back there behind them mountains there. But this is all kind of part of the lush riparian habitat created by the confluence of Salt Creek and the Amargosa River. So, yeah, it is kind of a special and unique area. And that's why it's closed off to all motorized vehicle use. And the only way you can check it out is by using your good old-fashioned footsies. They put these signs up about no motorized vehicles because there's a ginormous off-highway vehicle recreational area just up the road there called Dumont Dunes. It's a bunch of sand dunes where sometimes tens of thousands of off-roaders get together on the weekends to party and drink beer and drive their machines all up and down and all around. And, well, they don't want them driving here because, as you'll see on this walk or hike that we're about to do, there are some actually really cool historical artifacts here. And, well, you know, it's a friggin' wetland in the middle of the desert, so these places aren't that common, and I guess they need to be protected. I mean, according to this sign here, the United States has lost more than half of its wetlands in the course of the last 2 centuries. Half of all the wetlands in the United States have disappeared in the last 2 centuries. That's wild. I don't know if that's because of development or agriculture or just, pumping them out so people can have drinking water, but hey, this place, or these kinds of places, are few and far between, and they're becoming ever scarcer, so I guess that's why it's important to protect them. Anyway, you can pause the video and read the whole sign if you want, but we're just going to take this little trail here just to the left of it. I think it winds back down around these hills, and well, if what I read online is true, there looks to be some pretty interesting stuff down here. Okay, as we get started here, just a few things to mention. One, the trailhead to this thing is right on the side of Highway 127. That's the highway that goes from Baker, California into Death Valley. And so far you can see it's a really easy trail. It's pretty hard packed gravel, very flat, kind of going downhill into this, well, you can see there's a lot of green stuff ahead of us. So I'm guessing that might even be some kind of marshy area, which really is super unusual to find in a desert. And that's why I love this whole Amargosa River watershed area. It's just so surreal to see grasses and reeds coming up between sand dunes. And I can only imagine how the pioneers felt on the old Spanish trail. Okay, this watering hole, or I guess it's a watering hole that we're going to, the Salt Creek, I think this was a pretty significant stop on the old Spanish Trail. And that was the trail that went from Santa Fe all the way to Los Angeles. I think the Spanish kind of pioneered it in the late 1770s. Before that, it was probably an old Indian trading route. But, you know, once the white man arrived with all his horses and mules and wagons and carts, well, it got pretty well trodden and well defined. And it was one of the major thoroughfares to get from the East Coast to the West Coast before paved roads. But I can't imagine being one of those early pioneers in a wagon in this heat. I mean, remember, it's November, I think today's November 14th, and it's like 80 degrees, even in the middle of November. I can't imagine traveling through this and having to carry all my own water and the water for my horses and my livestock. And that's why watering holes or areas like this were so important. Okay, looks like we're coming to the first little sign here, which talks about good old Salt Creek, a scarce water resource. Okay, according to this sign, this area here is the only water-based habitat in like over 15 square miles. So that means all the bighorn sheep, all the quail, they said there was ringtail cats, badgers, bobcats, and over 150 bird species all come down here to drink water. Okay, we're coming up on another little interpretive sign. And believe it or not, some dim-witted, well, I won't say what, came all the way out here to tag graffiti on this sign. Can you imagine? I mean, who does that? Well, anyway, this sign just talks about the invasive salt cedar trees that, well, it says here they started removing them in 1992, but you can probably see right here behind me, there's still a whole bunch of them here. They're called salt cedar, or some people call them tamarisk or Athel trees. And they're basically an invasive species from Eurasia, but they'll grow just about anywhere with any tiny little amount of water. So the early pioneers out here in the desert planted a lot of them because, well, like I said, they'll grow just about anywhere and they grow fast, they provide shade, and they provide a windbreak. So unfortunately, well, I guess they're trying to get rid of them all now, but they're all over the place, including here. And I guess one of the main reasons they're trying to pull them out is they do suck out a ton of water from the ground. And like this other sign said, this is a habitat that supports, what, 150 species of birds and sheep and bobcats and all that stuff. So they kind of need that water to drink. Oh, looks like somebody's been here. Hopefully it's not a bobcat. But gee, if I was a bobcat, I'd probably want to hang out down here too, because it's really nice and shady. And oh look, I even see some standing water. Wow, this is so neat back here. And I know you're probably thinking, well, what's so cool about it? All I see are some scraggly grasses and a few half-dead trees. Well, this is... Where I come from, we call this very lush. You know what I mean? Like, not only are there those invasive salt cedar trees, but you can kind of see some, it's like bamboo type grasses back there. The whole ground is covered with, well, sort of half-dead Bermuda grass. There's a little shrubby bush there. Here's a bunch of mesquite trees. And then in the stream bed itself, of course, we have a ton of these bamboo-like reeds. And then according to the sign here, there's another sign, just talks about how this is a unique desert oasis for wading birds. And you might wonder how anything could wade here in this dried out old creek. Well, that's because there's plenty of water right there. Wow, look at this. This is super, super cool and super unique for this harsh, dry desert. And that's a pretty decent sized pond. I'll try to get up close here and show you. It's kind of murky and there's kind of a funky, like a skin on top of it almost. But I mean, look, you can see the reflection in the water of that hill right behind it. Okay, wow, this trail is already cooler than I expected, and I'm really curious to see what's down this way, because the trail does go on into this grove of invasive salt cedar trees. And boy, it's really a shame that these things do so much damage because, well, I think they're really pretty. They have these long, kind of shaggy needles, and they shed all over the desert floor after they die, and it makes this really nice soft carpet. They even kind of smell good, I guess. I don't know if I'd say the smell is good. If you've ever smelled salt cedar trees, they always kind of have a dusty smell. And I think it's because because they grow in the desert, and the needles on the ground, the carpet of needles, kind of collects the desert dust. So there's always this kind of like funky, musty desert smell in a grove of salt cedars, but I kind of like it, and maybe that's just because it reminds me of home. But objectively speaking, I don't know. I just feel like this is a really pretty grove of trees, and it's a shame that eventually they're probably going to tear it out. I mean, think about it. If you're like straggling through the desert trying to get to California, and it's hot and dry and you're thirsty and the sun is baking down on you, and then you come to this amazing shady grove of trees. Oh my God, it'd be like paradise. No wonder they planted so many of the damn things. Okay, the trail just kind of dead ends in this tamarisk grove. It looks like there is another sign back here. Let's go see what this says. Let's see, it says under the Athel trees. Okay, it's kind of hard to read this sign because the tree branch going in front of it, but so they call these Athel trees. Apparently Athel is related to the tamarisk salt cedar tree, but the difference and why they left these growing here is this is an Athel, and it's not the same as a salt cedar in that it won't grow or doesn't invade water courses. So I guess it doesn't, it's not in danger of choking out any of these watering holes. So they let this grove of Athel trees stand because A, it's not gonna invade the stream back there, and B, apparently it's a nesting ground for owls. How cool is that? Owls roost here. And it says a lot of settlers planted these Athel trees and I guess tamarisk trees in the late 1800s. So gosh, when the Spaniards were traveling the old Spanish Trail, they didn't even have these for shade. I mean, those guys must have been super hardcore. I don't know if this stream bed is always dry like this or if it's just the time of year. I mean, fall. Haven't had any, much rain to speak of. But the drainage basin for this, I don't think there's any mountains around here that get any snow anyway, so I don't even know if this is a seasonal creek. It just might be it, that little watering hole. And if so, well, I can certainly understand why they're trying to protect it from off-road vehicle use. Oh wow, look at this. It's like some old stone ruins. Huh, well, I don't see a sign anywhere here explaining what this is, but what I do see are tire tracks coming down here. I mean, look at this. You can clearly see there was one of those signs saying that it was closed to vehicle traffic, but these yahoos not only shot it up, they tore it out, knocked it down, and, well, they drove down there anyways. Listen, I'm as big an off-roader as anyone, if not a bigger off-roader, but golly, I just don't understand why it's so hard or why it chafes some people so much to stay on designated trails. Okay, well, anyway, I never did find a sign for this old stone ruin, and, well, maybe that's because some yahoo pulled it out, but I thought this might be the remains or the ruins of the oldest building in San Bernardino County. That's right, we're in San Bernardino County, just across the county line from Inyo County, but apparently the Spaniards, I guess, built an old stone cabin out here somewhere, and that might be it, back in, gosh, I can't remember, the 1830s or something, 1840s, and it's supposed to be the oldest building in all of San Bernardino County. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to look at. Not quite sure that's actually it, because that's just part of a wall, and from the pictures I saw online, it actually looked like you could still see, more of the cabin. So let's keep looking. Oh wow, look at all this white stuff here. I guess maybe that's why they call it Salt Creek. It's real salty. Is this salt? Let's see. Oh yeah, it's crumbly. Oh yeah, very salty. Bah. Okay, wow. Now the trail has come up out of the nice, cool, shady, green creek bed, and we're up here on this baking, broiling desert moonscape. I feel like in one of those cartoons where the guy's like crawling across the desert and he sees a mirage in the distance. Water, cool water, water, water. All day I face the barren wastes and dream about the taste of water, water, cool, clear water, water. Remember that one? Sons of the Pioneers. Yep, there it is, the old stone cabin. All right, look, there's a sign that kind of talks about it, but it's, oh my gosh, it's so baked by the sun you can hardly read it. But it says, this may be the oldest standing structure in the Mojave Desert. It was a 3-room office/house that was originally built between 1850 and 1852. Wow, look at that. Gosh, I would have expected the winds to have blown it down by now, but oh, 3 rooms, huh? It was a big cabin. Looks like there was a big fireplace down at the far end and really nice big windows on both sides with amazing views of the desert. Look at that. Oh my gosh, talk about a picture window. Oh, and there's like some old, I think that's the ruins of the stamp mill down there too. I mean, look how thick these walls were. I'm always complaining about how poorly insulated my house is because it's just made out of cinder block and drywall. This thing here is, gosh, that's got to be like 2 feet thick. That's a thick wall. And I guess with all these big windows on both sides, there must have been a pretty decent cross breeze coming through. And it looks like the floor was even kind of cemented in. So it might have actually stayed relatively cool in this old stone cabin. And then of course it gets real cold in the winter time. So they had this really cool stone fireplace. Looks like there was probably a chimney. Let's look around the back. Probably see it crumbled down. Yep. The old chimney crumbled into bits. You can still see right down it though. A little mantelpiece. There's the cabin. All right, we found the oldest standing structure in San Bernardino County and or the entire Mojave Desert. That was pretty cool. Now let's go check on this stamp mill. I think there's some mining ruins over here too. Okay, what does this one say? Ooh, tragedy in the Old West. Okay, this one you might really want to pause the video and read the whole thing because it's pretty interesting, but I'll sum it up. Okay, so basically this was called the Salt Spring Mine or the Amargosa Mine. And in October 1864, 3 miners named Cook, Plate, and Gordon were reportedly attacked by a roving band of Chemehuevis. I guess that's an Indian tribe from this area. Cook was killed and the mill was burned. The other 2 miners escaped into the desert and committed suicide 20 miles away. Gosh, I guess they just figured they had no chance and they'd rather just end it themselves. Yikes. Then it says there was another attack in either 1864 or 1866 where 8 miners were working at the claims and they noted a Paiute band camped at nearby Sheep Creek Springs. One of the miners made his way over to Marl Spring, which is 45 miles south of here near Kelso, to summon help from the military. The military did send a relief party, but they arrived too late. The 7 remaining miners, not realizing that help was on the way, had tried to make a pre-dawn escape, scattering as they fled, but they were easily spotted by the lookouts, and all 7 were slain by the Paiutes. So, well, it's tragedy for the miners, but hey, I guess all's fair in love and war for the Paiutes and the Chemehuevis. But it's crazy to think that all that fussing and feuding and fighting took place here in this peaceful valley. Oh gosh, I just noticed there's a graded off mine adit over there too. Looks like there's trails and mine tailings and bits and pieces of metal all over this valley. You could probably spend an entire day exploring here if you had the time. I didn't get here till 1 o'clock, so I'm just gonna try and see what I can see before dusk settles in. Okay, here's one kind of adit that's not graded off, and I can't imagine why. Must not go back very far. Wow, but look at how precisely it's dug. I mean, that's like a nice arch. Very cleanly cut. Should we go in? Oh, well, it doesn't go very far anyway. Just it dead ends at this little alcove that kind of looks like one of those religious shrines. You know what I mean? Like Our Lady of the Mojave Desert. Okay, now what's this? Is this a giant graded off mine shaft? Oh, holy cow, I think it is. Yikes! This is the biggest one I've ever seen. Holy cannoli. Well, we could walk on it. These iron bars aren't going to cave in anytime soon. Da, 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 da. Holy cannoli. Would you look down into that mine shaft? Goes down pretty deep. Looks like there's plenty of collapsed timbers and all kinds of fun stuff for anyone crazy enough to go down in there. Okay, I think we're coming up to the end of the trail by the old stamp mill here. And you can see, oh, it looks like there might be a couple more mine shafts down there too. Some old rusted metal stuff down in the gully. Another big ol' adit over here on the left. And then the ruins of the old stamp mill here on the right. Looks like it was a reasonably sized stamp mill, especially for this super lonely, desolate location. It does look like this trail goes on a little bit further. Oh, I see. This trail just goes right up to the boundary of the ASEC, which, if you remember, stands for Area of Critical Environmental Concern. It looks like they put this gate up here to try and stop the off-roaders from coming in from the Dumont Dunes. Look. Off there in the distance, you can even kind of see, I'll zoom in. There's some RVs parked. That's actually the little Dumont Dunes. There's a much bigger set of dunes kind of back that way somewhere. And then there's this wooden staircase built, I guess, so that foot traffic can at least get through this gate. But look, yeah, closed to motorized vehicle traffic. I mean, you can see there's plenty of off-roading tracks out there already. But that doesn't stop these guys from coming in and finding a way to drive around Salt Creek. Oh well. Anyway, this is a beautiful panoramic vista of these dunes and this desert, and oh gosh, it's so nice out now. The sun kind of went down behind that hill. It's probably only about 70 degrees. It's a light breeze blowing. Just a beautiful winter's afternoon here in the beautiful Mojave Desert. Anyway, sun is just about to go behind the mountains and it's getting dark fast. Thankfully, I only live about 25 minutes from here, so I'll be home in no time. But I sure hope you enjoyed exploring Salt Creek Hills with me. It's totally worth it in my opinion, and if you happen to be passing down Highway 127 from Baker to Death Valley, well, next time you see the sign, maybe you'll be inspired to stop and check it out too.